Okay, I know people are still arriving, but I know there's a lot of ground to cover. So I would like to welcome everyone to our keynote panel, Going Live and Sustaining Compliance in a Virtual World with HP and Shell. I'm really pleased to see this panel of women in technology. They consist of Holly Mars and Megan Kane from PwC, Carrie Gilstrap from HP, and Mary Ellen LaBerge from Shell. Holly and Megan, I'm going to turn this over to you.
All right, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the GRC keynote at the SAP Insider Conference. As Annie mentioned, we are discussing going live and sustaining compliance in a virtual world with HP and Shell. So Holly and I are here today from PwC to facilitate a discussion with two of our clients about their experiences going live with S/4HANA in a virtual environment. While many teams have been affected by the current world that we live in, we wanted to specifically address how we successfully go live with and sustain a control environment through a remote deployment, covering topics related to preparing the workforce, identifying risk and mitigation plans, and employing continuous monitoring tools. And with that, we'll start with a few introductions. I can go first. So my name is Megan Kane, and I'm a manager in our risk and regulatory practice out of Houston. I have over 7 years of experience with compliance in SAP. And my recent experience includes 3 S/4HANA deployments encompassing on-premise and private cloud. And then Holly.
All right. Thank you, Megan. Good morning, everyone. My name is Holly Mars, and I am also in our risk and regulatory practice. I'm a partner that focuses specifically on all things compliance SAP. So that could be security, controls, GRC. Always excited to be a part of the Insiders Conference and see you all today in this virtual environment, which is very fitting for our topic. I've had the pleasure of working with both Mary Ellen and Carrie over the last few years as they've done their virtual transformation and are continuing to go through that. And so we're really excited to hear from them today. I know they have some fantastic stories, lessons learned, experiences that we hope can be really relevant to you all as we're all navigating through our new COVID virtual world. So with that, I'd love to let them introduce themselves a bit, and I will pass it off to Carrie first for a quick introduction.
Yeah, thanks, Holly. This is Carrie Gilstrap. I'm with HP. I've been at the company about 19 years, but in audit all of that time. I'm an IT audit manager based in our Boise location. We went live with S4 in 2018, and I've been a part of our security core team. And I'm also responsible for auditing our implementation.
All right, thank you so much, Carrie. And Mary Ellen, it's all you.
Good morning. Yep. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining the call. I have been with Shell for close to 30 years. I'm currently the compliance manager for our Shell Midstream MLP entity, ShellX, on the New York Stock Exchange. I am a CPA by background. I'll make the disclaimer, I am not IT. So I leave all those questions to Carrie. I've been in mainly compliance roles for most of my career, upstream, central functions, downstream, and now midstream. I've been involved with 2 SAP implementations, one in 2014. Our GSAP downstream system was implemented and involved with implementing the control framework for that system. And then most recently in 2020, our S4 implementation for US midstream. I'm out of the Houston office and look forward to the discussion. Thanks.
Excellent. Thank you. All right. Well, we're going to make this very simple and interactive. No slides today, and just a chance for you guys to get to hear from our fantastic panel. And with that, I think we'll start by just hearing a little bit more from both Mary Ellen and Carrie about what they've done in the last year in this virtual world. So Mary Ellen, let's start with you. Tell us a little bit about your most recent project.
Sure. So it was about a year ago. It was Friday, March 13th, 2020, that we were in the office and PwC was brought in to help us with our implementation because we were a pathfinder. We were the first implementation in all of Shell globally. So we needed some additional resources to help us and expertise to help us implement the system successfully and ensure our control framework was good to go. And so about this time a year ago, we were in that critical phase of do we move forward or no-go situation. So Megan and I were going through the stats of the testing of the controls and prioritization and got our information together to send to my CFO. And it was a go. And that decision was made a week later. And then we never saw each other again due to COVID, work from home. Who would have figured that? So we were the first not only to implement S4HANA, private cloud. As I said, I'm not IT, so I'll rely on Megan and team to correct me. And we went live virtually, and first time ever in Shell to go live virtually, 100% virtually, that is. We are a global company with folks in India and our shared service locations, and Houston, but we usually have large teams together that help support a go live. So this was the first ever virtual. So yes, that was April 1st, 2020, a year ago.
Yes, and congratulations on that.
Thank you.
It's hard to believe it's been a year.
Yes,
well, thanks, Mary Ellen. And I know we were chatting, with our panelists initially, and Carrie, love to hear your story as well. You guys, I know, are going through a multi-year transformation, but HP had been somewhat virtual, prior to this new ways of working and COVID. So share a little bit about, what you guys have been going through and how it worked on the HP side.
Yeah, sure. Holly's right. This is a multi-year transformational project that we call Project Simplify because we had a lot of legacy SAP systems and we're trying to boil it down onto one S4 environment. So our first go live was in July of 2018, and we've had subsequent go lives, every 6 months. So we're still working on rolling out to like all of our business units, all of our regions, all of our countries. So we're scheduled to wrap up hopefully this year. But this year, there were a couple more things that we did. We just went live with Procure 360. So that has been a project, and I can share some of the learnings later. We had a data center migration as well. Looks like my video is frozen. We moved off of CenturyLink onto Amazon Web Services. So that some of that activity came in-house. And then just continual go lives. And yeah, that's a little bit about the projects that have been happening in the last year.
Just a little bit going on for you all.
Right.
No, that's great.
And what kind of platforms does your company have to enable this effective virtual collaboration? And also, what are some of the changes that you've seen communication-wise from prior projects with, boots on the ground and everybody in one place versus now all virtual? And we'll start with Mary Ellen, if you want to take that one first.
Sure. Well, I'll add that in addition to S4HANA, we also implemented our upgraded GRC12 system to help with the user access and segregation of duty issues. And but getting back to collaboration with the COVID, work from home restrictions and being a global company. I mean, we always used, Skype and whatever calls, but a more collaborative tool we deemed, which is used quite frequently in Shell now, Microsoft Teams, but was first time installed for our project team so that we can more collaboratively get together, meet frequently. So issues were raised, perhaps in the US, and then worked overnight in India. So, come back to work the next morning and issues were fixed. So good collaboration with Microsoft Teams. We also made sure that our shared service locations where most of our transactions are executed had the right infrastructure with internet connections and laptops to work from home effectively to get us over the go live hurdle. So Lots of collaboration working virtually. Microsoft Teams facilitated that somewhat. And then the project team cadence of just constant meetings, group team meetings to keep on top of issues and prioritize the work.
Yeah, I remember us joining those meetings to make sure compliance wasn't forgotten and those requirements were still met. So
And properly prioritized. Yes, correct.
That's right.
Correct.
Carrie, what about you?
Well, I mentioned HP2 is a global company, and we were very used to collaborating remotely already. So there wasn't a whole lot of change in how we worked, especially as I compared to some of my friends' companies where some of their employees didn't even have laptops. They had desktop computers that were like in their closed offices. So we were already really set up and we're already working a lot remotely and virtually in global teams. So we had the infrastructure of laptops for every employee, for example, which sounds like so basic, but we also moved off of Skype and more onto Zoom. So like we use Zoom for everything. We also have Microsoft Teams that we collaborate. Sometimes we complain that we have too many options and it's like, which one do we want to use? And, so we already had a lot of the things that I think were set us up to easily transition. Now, obviously the war rooms went away, right? Not everybody's not in the same room. So those are virtual. But a lot of the cadence and the communication has really just continued.
Mm-hmm. Yep, agree.
No, that's great. And I know that, as you think about, and you guys have started to touch on this a little bit, but it's preparing the workforce, right? Like we can't let them forget about this control training, opportunities. Another example I saw come through the chat is this idea of, we can't forget in the UAT phase, controls are important, right? And so want to touch a little bit about any other things that you guys felt like had to be done differently now that we're virtual to make sure, compliance isn't forgotten. You don't have someone walking by your cube saying, hey, don't forget about controls, don't forget about security. So how are you trying to, make sure that this message doesn't get lost? And with that, Carrie, let's start with you. Any other things you did kind of new or different just to make sure compliance was important?
I think our cyber team has definitely made a concerted effort as phishing attacks increase. We've had a lot of additional employee training around cyber. That has been a concerted effort by the company for sure. But as far as controls, as I mentioned, we went live in 2018. So we had our risk and control matrices like well established with regular 302 certifications occurring. So we were already in a cadence of thinking about controls, and we have a pretty good structure around controls and control design in the project. So that was really just able to continue.
Yeah, no, but that's a good point on the cyber side. That extra training is important from a compliance perspective and a new risk or an elevated risk now. For sure. How about you, Mary Ellen? Anything else that you can think about as far as preparing the workforce?
Sure. I mean, as far as compliance, I mentioned I'm the compliance manager for our publicly traded MLP. So timing was critical to go live. We purposely selected April 1. We closed Q1 in our legacy ERP, so we had time to remediate any issues, to work on the GR, group reporting module throughout the quarter before we actually submitted the Q2 10Q. So that was, just planning, making sure we mitigated as many risks as possible and had time to remediate any problems if needed. And then prioritizing those controls as well, the as is to be mapping being critical. And then what are those day one activities that we absolutely must have going properly day one, your accounts payable, R2P, AR type controls, and then the quarterly controls that we could work later. So prioritizing and, connected applications, making sure, we had our top 10 list of, okay, these are the really important ones. We've got, 50 or more, the busy chart of inflows and outflows out of your system, your connected applications, but what are the most important to prioritize to make sure those were tested and properly functioning day one are just a few examples of how we prioritized the risk.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, so Mary Ellen, let's talk about identifying risk and mitigation plans. So can you tell us about some of the unexpected challenges that arose around your go live and how y'all made it to the other side?
Oh, goodness. Okay. Well, no matter how much you plan and timeline and the war room with the maps of, what's going on and where you're supposed to be, the unexpected always happens. And I mentioned one of our shared service centers, which most of our transactions occur right during UAT in January of 2020. There was a volcano and there was a BPC of everybody had to work from home. So we lost a few days there, but we managed to catch up, but that was just the beginning. Those that are from the Houston area in February of 2020, when we brought folks in to do our live simulation testing, people out in the field were on point through the weekend to do this end-to-end testing. The huge water main in Houston broke, the offices shut down, and we had to bring in water and whatever for folks to get through that. But again, okay, little wrinkle, we'll readjust, we'll work, virtually, we'll change things around, test schedules, we'll get through it. And then, as I mentioned, of course, then Friday, March 13th was the last day that we were all in the office together, and that was not planned. So we had to regroup and think about how to do this go live virtually, making sure, like I said, our shared service locations had the right equipment. We set up teams and went from there. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, and I know a lot of the controls were operated out of that shared services center, right? So even thinking back to you, Carrie, saying the importance of making sure everyone has laptops, right? Or you mentioned, your continuity planning and making sure that you have those controls around, continuity in case system failure. So I know that contributed to. Really impressed how we were able to, not push the go live based on all of the challenges that y'all experienced.
Yes.
Perfect. All right, so I'm going to shift gears, and this is perfect actually because we had a Q&A come in as well on the same topic. But, now that we're virtual, is there an opportunity for continuous control monitoring, right? What kind of tools are out there and ways that we can, be more efficient and rely on less manual efforts here? And so, Carrie, I'll take this one to you if you don't mind, and share some stories. I know this is an area that you've been working in quite a bit, and so we'd love to hear your stories on continuous control monitoring.
Yeah, this is one of the areas I'm definitely passionate about, and HP has done quite a bit in, as I know probably some of you have as well. We had a legacy homegrown tool that we used to monitor some key risk indicators kind of before GRC could really do the functionality. So obviously with transitioning onto S4, we knew we had to replace that. So not only do we have the CCMs built in GRC, and that continues to be a focus for the company. That was part of the go live and that we worked with PwC on, and we're still continuing to build out those CCMs. It's definitely a priority for us. But like I said, we had this legacy system that we really leveraged heavily to particularly monitor our application controls. We could benchmark and monitor for change, and really gave us a lot of efficiencies, particularly in our SOX testing. So, and it also made our IT general controls testing really easy because we had a lot of legacy systems. It kind of consolidated data into one view where we could pull populations and pull samples and test configurations directly in the tool. So we did have a project over the last year. We went live in November. We did some GRC custom code combined with a BI dashboard so that we could, that's for our new S4 systems. There's 3 that we're monitoring. And we went live recently and kind of have been in lockstep, obviously, with our external auditor, making sure they're comfortable with that new piece of software and code, and just did like a post-system implementation review on that to make sure that we had the right controls built into that tool. So yeah, there's a lot that we are doing in that space that we will continue to build out.
That's great. And I love how you pointed out the important step of getting your external auditors comfortable with your continuous control monitoring tools, right? That's always an important step. It's essential. But once you've done that, then like you said, you can save a lot of time and effort on your side.
Yep,
Perfect.
absolutely.
Holly, I'll just add to that because I do remember that was one thing we did as well as we brought our external auditors into our steering team meetings. So they were made aware of the changes and what controls were changing, the IT controls, and where that stood in SODs as well. So
yeah. Thanks. And Mary Ellen, you bring up the point of bringing them along the way. That might be easier if they're walking around your office, right? Yeah. And if they're stopping by and chatting at your cube, but we're virtual now. So you have to make an even more concerted effort to bring your external auditors along the way, get them comfortable and give them the information they need so they can rely.
Yep.
Yeah, and on that note, Mary Ellen, do you want to tell us how y'all finished out the year in your financial reporting and compliance outcomes?
Yes. Yes, listening to Carrie, yes, we did bring our auditors in early. They tested heavily. We tested internally heavily because it was a lot of change. Many controls were tested, IT controls. We were internally audited, not just by the SOX testing teams, but by Shell internal audit. Deep dives into the new SOD rule sets because S/4HANA is different. And like I mentioned, we were the pathfinder. And at the end of the day, we filed our K end of February, and we had a very good outcome and effective 404 framework sign off with S/4HANA. So yes.
Made all of our hard work worth it, right?
Yes, it did. Yes. Thank you.
Excellent.
Thank you.
All right. Well, now I think we're going to open it up to just some words of advice, right? Lessons learned, wisdom. We'll start with you, Carrie. What kind of things come to mind when we think about, messages we can share to our attendees today in this virtual world we're in?
Yeah, thanks, Holly. No way could I be comprehensive, of course, but a couple of things readily come to mind. And I shared this as we were preparing for this call. One thing is around SOC reports. Obviously S4 is probably your most important system in the company. And so you really have to make sure that you have those SOC reports lined up. Now, HP is in a unique situation where we have a 1031 year end, which sometimes makes the timing of these SOC reports really difficult, right? Because a lot of them go through 1231 and we don't get them in time. So I would just encourage you, I think this goes for any project, that this should be a conversation with the vendor, on the outset, making sure that these SOC reports are giving you what you need and the coverage period. It just took a lot of calendar time to get that straight with SAP. And in fact, we're still going through it with Procure 360. We're having calls this week on this topic. So that I was surprised at how much calendar time that took to get the SOC reports kind of down and correct. Another thing that is kind of top of mind right now is we spent so much time developing these beautiful RCMs for our new S4 environment, right? And great test procedures. These are rock solid. And just recently, our external auditor came back and said, you know what? We think that this really needs to be replicated in your legacy environment. And we're like, what? So, which represents a whole lot more work. And even though I'm trying to convince, hey, the materiality on these other systems is going down and But anyway, it's just something to be aware of as you look to manage your legacy environment and your go forward environment, if that's your situation.
Set the bar really high.
I know, right? So that's just a couple of things that I would say to be cognizant of.
That's great advice. Thanks, Carrie. Mary Ellen, how about you?
I would just say being flexible, no matter how much you plan and just be expecting the unexpected and being flexible to work through the priorities of what really is critical, timelines, and we did. I mentioned SODs so many times because it was so new to us, new roles. I mean, we leapfrogged from a legacy system that didn't have workflows. I mean, it was just a major change for the business. So getting all those roles properly designed, and then doing those SOD checks before go live. Just a few learnings that I would highly recommend before going live, because it was a big change for our business. And then expect the unexpected, and just try to plan the best you can and prioritize. So.
And I know on that flexible note, we'll see if our panelists are up for any of these questions that have come in. A couple of them we've luckily been able to hit. We did touch on, the use of process control, and how, Carrie's mentioning the continuous control monitoring. I think both of y'all actually started to allude to user access as well, right? We did have one question around user access reviews. So if there's anything that comes to mind that you want to add related to user access review, we did have a question come in around how you're handling that, pros and cons and challenges that might be coming. Carrie, do you want to start that one? Any thoughts or feedback on user access review?
Yeah, I'm looking at the question, how are we performing user access reviews? What are some best practices and effective if there are different role owners? Yes, we definitely do a periodic user access review in our S4 environment. It happens twice a year. It's pretty large process with the volume of users that we have. I'm trying to think, there's always this conversation, who's best positioned to do the review? Is it the role owner versus the manager? And that's something that we go around with all the time. So anyway, yeah, we're doing those. It's involved. A lot of it is automated through GRC. So I think we were able to leverage a lot of the functionality straight out of GRC to do that.
Yeah, that's good. And I think we did the same out at Shell, is leveraging some of the GRC workflow to make that process a little simpler. I know, Mary Ellen, you mentioned SOD. Our next question is probably your favorite topic, segregation of duties, and making sure that all gets addressed before go live. We had some last minute user to role mapping, fire drills. Any thoughts or lessons learned that you can share on that?
Well, I was hard stop. We just removed anything that was not unmitigated, and then the business found other ways to get it done, and we worked through it post go live. And you all helped us through that, moving, T codes or transactions around. Like I said, I'm not IT, but we worked through it with the business to divide up the functions, because as I mentioned, we leapfrogged up to current technology, and just understanding the Fiori apps and the services and the T codes and whatever that they pull, that did cause SODs in the long run, and being able to successfully split those functions around the business and redesign the business a bit. And I will add to Carrie's comments, we do the twice a year reviews. We have a number of super users that are responsible for approving the role access as well. So yes.
I see they're
doing that early before go live, because it is a lot of work with change.
Yeah.
To resolve. Yep.
And Carrie, you had another comment?
Oh, I just saw there was an SOD question. I think one of the most helpful things we said was, one of the bottom lines is there would be no SOD conflicts within a role, because that just explodes your SOD conflicts off the top. So even though the business will want to push you on that, that is just a bottom line that I just don't think you can allow. That's one of the benefits of a new implementation, right? Is starting new and really hashing out these SOD issues that may have existed in the past. So I think that's been important for us to stick with that. You can combine profiles or roles to get an SOD conflict and, apply mitigating controls, but I think it's far easier to manage those conflicts if you have some of those hard set roles that you just won't cross.
Yeah, it's going to make everyone's life easier if you stick to those standards or guiding principles. And no SOD within a role is probably one of the best ones there. That's excellent. Well, we do have other questions coming in, but also want to be respectful of time. And, make sure we go ahead and give these lovely ladies a chance to go back and continue on with their normal day jobs. Megan, I know you've been monitoring questions. Is there anything else we want to close with? Maybe one more that's come in that we want to jump to, and if not, then we'll go ahead and end and carry forward.
I think, I feel like we've sort of touched on some of these in answering the other questions. I think this may be a good one, Carrie, not to put the burden on you, but is GRC centrally managed in a competence center, or is it more decentralized? Maybe a good one to close out on.
Yeah, that was a question, like who's the owner of GRC? And so we landed, it's really owned by our IT compliance function right now. So it's all centrally managed, and we are on the latest version of that. I think there was another question too about critical access reviews. Yeah, that's part of our SOD rule set that we have that gets some upfront preventive controls and detective controls. Yeah.
Yep, and I remember we did that at Shell as well, right,
Yes,
Mary
we're
Ellen?
the same. We're the same. Yep, I'm nodding my head. Agree all with that. Yeah.
No,
Somebody asked about resources. I don't know if we want to touch on that. I'm scanning the questions.
Sure, yeah, let's do it. It looks like this question is around managing additional resources needed from internal audit. Did you hire out? And I know, Carrie, you sit within the internal audit function. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, we did, because obviously, we were still running our legacy environment and putting in S4. So it definitely created a resource shortage. So yes, we had to co-source with and supplement our internal audit staff for a period of time. So we definitely have kind of like a bubble up that you would expect would, go down over a period of time. So yes, we have had to supplement. And that was part of the project budget on the outset.
Yeah, I think that's key to it, right? It's kind of getting ahead of that especially in a 3-year transformation, or Mary Ellen, yours was over a year, right? When you're planning that out, knowing when are we going to have a resource challenge, let's plan ahead. And like you said, Carrie, build it into your budget. Probably one of the most important things. No, this is great. I appreciate all these questions. Apparently you guys are giving some good answers because they keep coming. I know we have just a few more minutes, so maybe we'll go ahead and run through just a few more. I think there's a few just around, this popular topic of the SOD rule set, right? We had one around what was your biggest SOD challenge, another around how did you potentially modify the rule set? I know this one's getting into a little bit more of the technical world, but Mary Ellen, we did spend some time, right, going through with Raja and your team to get that rule set tailored from the out of the box to what's really needed for Shell. Anything you want to add there?
No, I would just say, and I think I mentioned it before, the Fiori apps was very different for us, and being the Pathfinder at Shell that the team was not familiar with. Our SOD advisors sit in one COE, one central function, center of excellence, and they manage it for all of our businesses, upstream, trading, and downstream. So, we have our globally recommended rule set, and then just customizing it and making sure wasn't changed all that much, but just making sure we comply and consider the Fiori apps was probably the key takeaway.
Yeah, no, that's true, because, you guys had a fantastic SOD process and a rule set that was already solid. And then you throw in these dang Fiori tiles, and then all of a sudden we have to make sure we get those checks in as well, which we did, but it took a little time.
Yes.
Carrie, anything else you would add?
I think Mary Ellen did a great job.
Look at that. You're technical, Mary Ellen.
I've learned over the years, we rely on our systems, so you have to know a little bit to be dangerous. Yes.
Excellent. All right. Well, we do want to appreciate everyone's time. Our panelists have been fantastic. It's certainly been a fun, session this morning for me to be a part of an all-women panel, and in the spirit of Women's Day as well. So thank you, ladies, for your time. And we do really appreciate it. This session is recorded, so I know if you missed anything or have follow-up questions, Megan and I are available to help answer those. And we appreciate everyone's participation. Great questions, great panel.
Thank you so
Thanks,
much.
Holly.
Have a great rest of the day. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks everyone for attending. This was a fantastic panel. It was brought to us by PricewaterhouseCoopers. So if you haven't had a chance, please check out the assets in their virtual booth. We hope that you gain some valuable insights from these wonderful women, and we hope that you enjoy the rest of your event experience.